All right, is this thing on? Hey guys, welcome to this video here. We're going to be still covering with the freeCodeCamp's Build a Nutrition Label. That's what we've been going through. We have a couple videos out so far. We're going to go through the next 17 steps in that. And this is your first time watching our channel. My name is Rob. I'm with PreCodeCamp, and I'm coming at these lessons from an instructor point of view. So if you are looking to gain some insights, if you're looking to add to your abilities as we're going through this, I'm going to be going through each of the steps and explaining why are we doing this and what does it do for us. So let's go ahead and get started with that. But before we do, you know what to do, which is hit that like button because it really helps us out and it's free for something that you can do for us. All right, let's go to our computer. All right, so where we left off on here is step number 35, and it has us creating this nutrition label that we see over here. And in step number 35, it tells us that in order to create this section up here, we're going to need to add a little bit of margin on the top and bottom. Matter of fact, we're removing margin, and then we're also removing margin on the right and left also. And then it looks like we're adjusting some font sizes. So let's go ahead and get the selector working. When we're utilizing the dot and then the left container and then the P, what this is doing here for us is it's taking a look at our HTML document and it's looking down there and says, hey, am I matching up with any class called left container? That's what it's going to look for first. So it's coming down here and it's looking and it's looking. Does it find a left container? Awesome, it does. Okay. Then because it has that P on here, so it says any paragraph tag that is inside of the left container. So that is very specific. It's going down to the next one. Is this a P tag? Nope. Is this a P tag? Oh, it is. And that's what it's going to adjust, what it's going to target. So notice that we didn't have to give this a class. We didn't have to give it anything whatsoever. And so that's what makes it nice is sometimes you can get by without having a specific class, and you can utilize the selector with this step here. Let's go ahead and target it. I will do left container. And again, as a reminder, anything that's usually in these gray boxes is something that you'd want to go ahead and put into your code exactly. I have been trying to help out a little bit with the freeCodeCamp forums, and some people are trying to go off on their own and not put what's inside these gray boxes, and it's going to confuse the test. So make sure you are doing that. Next here, top and bottom margin are going to be -5. And then because it gives us left and right also, we can get by with utilizing the margin property here. And it says for the top and bottom we want -5, so -5 pixels. And then the left and right are the same also, so we can do -2 pixels. And then put the semicolon in there. And then the rest of this stuff might be self-explanatory. We got the font size. This is going to be 2EM. Okay. One of the things that you might want to start looking up is what's the difference between an M and then an REM. Okay. And remember, the REM deals with the root, and then just the EM kind of goes off of the parent container's natural font size. So basically doubling it here based off of the parent, 2EM. Next on here, font weight is going to be 700. So we'll do font weight 700. And there we go. We see the calories coming up in bold. It's a little bit bigger. And now any type of paragraph tag that we put on this is going to get this exact type of styling. Let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations. We are moving on to the next one. So step number 6 with freeCodeCamp's Build a Nutrition Label, it tells us that it wants us to create a brand new selector, calories info span. Notice there's a space between there, and we want to set the font size to 2.4 M, and then the font length to 700 as well. So we can come over here, and this is where we're going to do our targeting, and it's going to be calories info and the span. So we'll do the following. Okay, now again, this is targeting the calories info. So we're coming down here to the calories info, and then it's looking for the span that is inside of here. So if I collapse this, it's only looking inside here for any kind of span tag. So we're affecting the value here, the 230. This says the font size, it wants it to be 2.4 M. So it looks like it's going to be a little bit bigger than the calories one. So let's test that out. Okay, so you can see it's a little bit bigger, and then the font weight, it wants us to do 700. Let's go ahead and check our code. There we go. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next. Step number 37 in Build a Nutrition Label for freeCodeCamp. It tells us that we want to shift this a little by setting our margin to be -7 pixels, and then we want the left and right to be shifted over to the left by 2 pixels. So let's test that out here. And again, we can use the property of margin to accomplish this. So -7 pixels on the top and bottom, -2 pixels on the left and right. There we go. Looks like it is now put in place. Let's check the code. There we go. Moving on to the next step. All right, so step number 38 in Build a Nutritional Label, it tells us that we need to add a new div with a class of divider medium. So let's go ahead and do that here. So we'll do a div. Again, open and close. I'm always telling everybody open and close because I see it so many times in the forums and the students as well. Hey, why isn't this code working? They forgot to put a closing tag on it. Okay, so make sure that we do that. And then it just says give a class attribute here to divider, and then we'll do medium. Okay, all right, and let's go ahead and check our code. There we go. And we can see that it is already working. It placed it right down here below. Moving on to the next step. Step number 39, create a medium selector and give it the height of 5 pixels. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're just going to do medium. We're going to set that to 5 pixels for the height. There we go. And that created a nice little line there. All right, let's check our code. There we go. Moving on to the next step. All right, so step number 40, it says create a new div below the medium element. So let's go ahead and do that first. Again, open and close to not have any kind of confusion whatsoever, because this is a multi-step here. So there's our div. It says go ahead and give it the class attribute of this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. It's 2 separate classes because there's a space, but I want to make sure that I'm spelling it all correctly. So we'll do class, and then we'll go ahead and paste that in there. I'm going to turn off my style so we have a little more room. Because it says in here, in the div that we just got done creating, let's go ahead and put a paragraph element. Again, I'm just doing this step by step. I'm not trying to get over crazy. I'm not trying to read into things and type ahead of time. I'm just doing everything as I'm seeing it. Next, it says, let's go ahead and place this text inside here. So let's do that. And then the next thing that we want to do to this paragraph tag is make sure that it has the class, and we want to set that equal to bold and right. So bold, and then we want to hit the space bar because it's 2 separate classes, and then there we go. All right, let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next part here. So step number 41 here, it says that the text with the daily value, this needs to be shoved all the way to the right. Because this is in a flex box, we're going to utilize justify content, and then we're going to do flex end in order to get this to happen. But first, let's go ahead and use the selector right in order to target it. Next, let's go ahead and put in here the justify content flex end, and that will shove it all the way to the end of the flex box. And let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next step. Step number 42, it says use your existing divider element as an example and add a new divider one after the paragraph one. So we've done this before, so all we have to do in here is do a div, and we want to set the class name on this to divider. But again, I'm just doing the opening and closing first, and then I'm going to add the class. All right, I believe that's all it's wanting. Let's check our code. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next step. All right, so step number 43 looks to be a little tricky, so let's go ahead and go through this one step by step here. But when we are looking at this, one of the best things that I would say to do is just take everything and look over it as a whole, but then try to piece it together from the beginning, and it helps you out here. So the very first thing is we need a paragraph element. That's the first thing. So we want the paragraph. Again, I'm just opening and closing, so I don't forget that closing tag. And we want to give it the text of total fat 8 grams 10%. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to paste that entire thing in here. Now it wants us to wrap some things into some span text elements. So let's go ahead and do that. So it says the very first thing is wrap the text total fat in a span. So what it's asking us to do is do a span here, and then over here we want to close off this. Okay, now the total fat is in its own little span. Notice that our flex box is acting as normal. The next thing that we want to do on here is we want to put one around the 10%. So let's go ahead and do that also. So we'll do a span here, and then we'll come over to the end part and close it off. Okay, so now we have total fat, we have 8 grams right there in the middle, and then we have 10% on the far right. Next, it says, hey, for the spans that we put on here, go ahead and give it a class of bold. So now we're going to do class bold. And so notice that the total fat got bolded. And then the last span that we have here, it wants it to be bold as well. Okay, so that should satisfy this. Let's go ahead and check our code. And there we go. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next. So take the big problem as a whole, break it down into little steps, and you'll get there. So I'm on step number 44, and this one's being very finicky on things when it shouldn't really be finicky on how I was wanting to show you all this on how to complete this. So I'm going to do it, submit my code to get checked, and then I'll explain it here. But what it's asking us to do is it's saying, hey, this 8 grams that we have over here, it is all by itself in the middle. It needs to be over here, but it doesn't need to be bold. Otherwise, we would just put the 8 grams on here and keep it bold. But we need to put a parent span tag on here to only give Flexbox 2 elements to work with instead of 3. So what I'm going to do here, it just says we need to wrap it with another span. So we're going to do span here. And like I said, this one might be a troubling one that you guys all have because I want to make things look pretty. And right now it doesn't look pretty having it all on one line. So then I'm going to come right here to the 8 grams and I'm going to close off that span. And notice now that Flexbox is treating this as 2 separate entities, and it's shoving one all the way to the left, shoving the other one all the way to the right. And let's go ahead and check the code here. We got the congratulations. So now I can go ahead and explain this to you. Maybe if we see it visually on our page here with indentations or proper indentations like you would in a code editor. So I just want to show you that, hey, this right here is the very beginning of our first element that Flexbox is even taking a look at here. So I'm going to do it like this, and hopefully you all can see that this is going to be the next element Flexbox sees, and it sees this one here as the first element. Okay. Without the span tag, it looks like we have one. It would look like we would have one just for the total fat. Then it comes in here and says, oh, here's another new element, the 8 grams. And then the last one here, it says that it is the 10%, which is we got 3. We're trying to share a Flexbox with 3 items, but now we're only sharing it with just 2. So anyways, hopefully that makes sense. But anyways, we got the green check mark. The test only works if they're all in a single line for some reason. So that may be giving you trouble. All right, moving on to the next one. All right, step number 45 has us add another nutritional fact on here. This time it's saturated fat with 1 gram, 5%. It says go ahead and create a paragraph element just below this one. So we'll do the paragraph tag. Again, open and close. Next, inside here, we're going to put the saturated fat, 1 gram, 5%. So I'm going to paste that in there. Wrap the 5% in a span with the class set to bold. Okay, so I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to get it on my clipboard, and I'm just going to do the span here. Then I'm going to paste and then span by closing it off. It does say that we need to add a class to this, which is bold. Okay, and it says on here, in this case, is enough to align the percentage of 5% all the way to the right, and it looks like it doesn't care about doing any kind of bolding or anything else with the saturated fat and 1 gram. Let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations. Let's move on to the next one. Step number 46, it says the new paragraph element will need to be indented. Let's give it a class of indent. So we're going to come down here to this paragraph and we'll give it a class. We're going to set that equal to indent. There we go. Let's check our code. Congratulations. Let's move on to the next step here. Now we can create that new class of indent, and we're going to do the margin left. We're going to set that to 1M. So we'll do indent, 1M for the margin left. So you can see how it's indented now. Perfect. Now we have a new indent class that we'll probably use on more nutritional facts. So step number 48 in building a nutritional label, it tells us that we want to create the daily value paragraph tag selector, and we want to target all the paragraph elements that are inside the daily value section. So let's go ahead and give that selector that we're going to be creating a border bottom of 1 pixel solid and then the hex code there. So what is this doing? Again, we're looking at multiple selectors, and multiple selectors are a really great way to target things and not have to clutter up your HTML with useless classes. And so it's saying, hey, anything that we put underneath here for the daily value right here, which is this class right here. So if I come over here and I collapse this, this is the class that it's looking for. It found it. Then it's moving through every single one of these elements and it's checking, hey, are you a match for a paragraph element? Because I already know that I should be inside of this class and I'm looking for paragraph elements. So boom, here's one. So I'm going to be affecting this. I'm going to be affecting every single paragraph that we come to, any type of paragraph tag that we come to. So that's what we're doing here. So we're going to go ahead and do the daily value. We want to select the paragraph tags only, and then we want the border bottom. We want to set that equal to the 1 pixel solid, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and put it down here, and don't forget the semicolon, and now it has those border bottoms on there. And again, I don't know if the double line is going to be there or not, if we're going to remove it in some future code that looks interesting and weird. So we'll see. And let's go and check our code. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next part here. All right, step number 49 here, it tells us that the border bottoms underneath the daily value, okay, and the saturated fat, they do not extend the full width. Let's go ahead and add a no divider to the class of those two elements. So I'm going to come up here to the daily value, and I'm just going to type in no divider. I'm going to do the same thing for the saturated fat one, but I need to put that hyphen in there. There we go. Let's go and check the code. Congratulations. Let's move on to the next one. So step number 50 is we're going to utilize the not pseudo selector here, and it basically is telling us, hey, you know what, we can just modify this selector right here by adding a pseudo class. And we're saying, hey, I want you to select everything that we have that's inside the daily value that is a paragraph tag, but we want to make sure that it is not selecting the one that has no divider in it. So if it comes across a no divider, we're not applying this line. So that makes it a real quick, easy way for us to utilize this pseudo class. So we're going to put the colon on here, we're going to do not, and then what do we not want to go for? In this case here, it's going to be no divider. And there we go, it removed that additional line here. And so let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations, let's move on to the next step here. All right, we are on step number 51. It says that we want to go ahead and add a separate divider below each of the no divider elements. We already have an example of one already, and that is on the daily value. And what it's talking about here is this little Lone Ranger here. It is all by itself. It's just a divider, nothing inside there, but it has that class divider. And this is the line that it's doing. It's putting it all the way across. It wants us to do the same thing for the saturated fat, to put one line going all the way across it as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this right here, and then I'm going to paste it down below the paragraph tag here, and that should satisfy the condition here. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to come to the end of the paragraph and paste it. Notice that I do get my line down here. Now it is the full length. Let's go ahead and check our code. And we got the congratulations. We are 75% complete. All right, so we are 75% complete with this, and we're going to break off for the next video here. Now, one of the things that I would say for a takeaway of these steps that we have gone over so far is that the following. We have now seen several times of the selectors where we can target a class and then a selector in there. The other takeaway I would say is the use of span tags and flexbox to separate things. That's an interesting approach to the task to make this look like a nutritional label. And then lastly, we were introduced with the pseudo class of not, which is interesting in itself, to be able to select everything but to not select something based upon a class. So that might be one to put in the notebook because you might not use it as much, but just know that it is out there to use. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe, share this with somebody that you might know that is needing some help. There's forums out there, there's Facebook. Use those tools to help spread the help and knowledge. All right, we'll see you in the next video.